No question.
Will he be in pain for days or weeks or months?
His surgeons believe that he will probably be in moderate pain. That will probably not be for more than a day or two.
Cut through muscles, didn't you?
You have to cut through chest wall muscle. That's
pretty rugged muscle to cut, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be painful.
about average muscle.
You told us what
Will he
you told
have
us
to
what
be
the surgeons tried to do. You told us what the surgeons did to the president. What are they doing or trying to do to alleviate Brady's condition?
Well,
exactly what happens after they open him up?
Okay, I can't, again, anything I'm telling you is rather speculative. Normally, they would have to remove the tissue that seemed irreparably damaged. Anytime you're operating inside the head for very obvious reasons, you try and salvage as much tissue as you think has a remote chance of recovering. This is not a good injury. It's it causes a lot of damage.
Would there ever be in the near future needs to go back and reoperate?
I say that was extremely remote.
Doctor, you say that Mr. Brady is fighting for his life?
Well, I think any time a patient is in critical condition, in a sense, he's fighting for his life.
Dr. O'Leary, did the president get any first aid in the car on the way over?
I really can't answer that question. I don't know.
Doctor, what type of medication is the president on, or will he be on while he's in the hospital? Is he on any IVs, any painkillers?
Well, one would, he's on intravenous solution right now. He, as I said, he required no blood intraoperatively, and as with any patient, the medications really depend upon what the patient's needs are. I would expect the president is probably not going to need very many medications, except perhaps some modest painkillers for a day or so.
What type of recuperation is normal for a person of his physiological age? Do you expect him to be back to normal routine within, say, 2 months?
Depends on totally normal routine. I would guess probably a couple of months after his hospitalization, so maybe 2.5 to 3 months might be a good guess, but it is a guess.
Recommend that he leave Washington for, say, his ranch where there's a less stressful situation around him for a while?
Well, that's really up to him and his staff. I'm sure that he will be adequately protected.
What was Mr. Brady's brain waves? Were they flat? Or what can you tell us they were?
I don't know the answer to that question.
As a doctor, would you advise him to take off further time beyond the time that he's hospitalized?
Well, taking off time depends on what you're talking about.
Away from the duties of the presidency.
That's really not, my judgment to make for him. I think that I would urge him to limit his physical activity within reason. There is no reason to believe that he has any impairment of his ability to make decisions or what have you. Making decisions is stressful business, but I think he's going to be fully up to it.
Doctor, earlier there was a report that the bullet missed the heart by an inch. You said it missed by several inches. Several inches is a relatively large amount of time. When you put on your chest, it seems to intersect the heart. Much closer than that.
Okay, I think.
Other than how close it came?
Well, I wasn't specifically there in the operating room. I think I know where those reports came because, remember, when we're in an operating room, the only x-ray that we can really get that's going to be valid is one that is taken from front to back. Okay, and when you held that up, it looked as if the bullet was close to the heart, but you were missing that third dimension. And in that third dimension, it turned out that the bullet was significantly removed from the heart by several inches, as I've said. It was not close.
Can you tell us at what stage Mr. Brady is in his surgery now and about when it will be completed? Do you have any idea?
Well, having seen some of these patients, it may go on, it really could go on for hours.
When that other people were injured?
I honestly don't know that. I suspect so, but I don't know. Yes. Thank you.
There were reports that the president wasn't aware of what happened to him. Is that really true? Could that possibly be? That when he first was shot, that he didn't know what had happened?
Well, sometimes there's a there's some, shock as a consequence of being hit. And you hear people describe, afterwards, my goodness, I've been shot. So it's hard to know at what point that realization hit him. I would think by the time he hit our emergency room that he knew that he had been shot.
The emergency room notified that the president was coming and the president was injured.
Yes.
They were notified from the car?
Okay, I don't know where the call came in from, but we were notified in advance, and he was here almost immediately after that and was literally met by the trauma team at the door.
Doctor, there were reports that the bullet was a low-caliber bullet. Could you speculate for a second what would happen if it was a higher-caliber bullet, or perhaps it was what's known as a dum-dum bullet?
I really can't speculate on that. I'm not a ballistics expert.
Was the president's personal position present during the operation?
Excuse me?
Was the president's personal position present during the operation?
Yes, he was.
Are you bringing in outside medical consultants, or have they been brought in to assist you in the next
Not
few
at
days?
this time.
You're saying there were no complications in surgery of any kind?
No, it was, he had a simple penetrating bullet wound into his left lung, and that was it.
How many doctors were involved in the president's operation at this point?
Actually performing surgery, probably 4 or 5 between Mr. McCarthy and the president. The neurosurgical team is working separately.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
First of all, O'Leary, O apostrophe, capital L-E-A-R-Y, Dennis with 2 N's and 1 S. Got a middle initial? Yes. S? S is in Sam.
Internal medicine and hematology.
Internal medicine and hematology. Let me thank Dr. O'Leary first of all, and then take upon the White House the blame for you not getting detailed information earlier. We had specifically asked the team at the hospital to let the White House handle this and to wait until the surgery was over before there was any briefing. So if any of you have any complaints about lack of information, don't blame them, blame me, which you've done in the past anyway.
Did you have a reason, Mr. Nofziger, for believing it was best, once the operation completed at 5:30, I understand it, to wait until after 7 to be able to say that the president was
Completed at 5:30. I think that by the time that it had been closed up, he had been closed up and was out of there, it was considerably later than that. I think it was near 6:30, Sam.
What was it, Doctor?
Verify that?
Can I get a comment? 5:30, Doctor.
The basic surgery was finished at 5:30. He was then closed, which is basically routine for a procedure of this type. And I believe that they finished closing very carefully at about 20 after 6.
Mr. Nofziger, the vice president was informed immediately, was he not?
Yes, he was.
Would you say that while the president was incapacitated here during the operation, the vice president was in charge? There is a report which I believe from the White House that General Haig said he was in charge.
I don't think I want to comment on that. The president will be fully capable of making decisions tomorrow, according to the doctors. In the meantime, the business of government has gone on normally, and we expect it to continue to. And Vice President Bush is here, and the rest of the government is functioning normally, and we expect that it will continue to do so.
When you say here, where?
He should be at the White House.
Then one more question. Since you're taking the blame on yourself for almost everything, can you explain why it was...
I don't blame you, but I think that...
Can you explain why it was first stated that the president was unharmed?
Because the initial reports to us were that he had not been hit, and by the time I got to the hospital, we knew that he had been. But you're going to ask me why so many bad rumors run around these things. Some of them come from us, some of them come from you all. So I cannot tell you that. I just don't know.
Initial report from who?
What?
The initial report came from who?
Probably the wire services, the first one I heard.
You heard anything about the motive for the shooting?
I'm sorry?
You heard anything about the motive for the shooting?
No, I have not. We just, you'll have to talk to the Secret Service and to the police about that. That's outside of my area right now. You know, if you will talk one at a time, I can sure do better. Yeah.
Have you established now a schedule for regular medical bulletin releases?
My plan is to meet with the doctors here shortly after 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. We will then have a briefing in the White House press room. As soon thereafter as possible, we will notify you. My suspicion it'd probably be maybe as early as 8:30, and we will bring Dr. O'Leary or one of the doctors over with us at that time.
This press room?
What?
Are you going to close down this press room?
Yes, this was to keep you out of the rain. Okay, let's see. I had a question over here.
Have you considered invoking the 25th Amendment that the president be disabled and rejected it?
No, we have not considered it, or we have not considered invoking it, no.
Did the Secret Service agent save the president's life by stepping in front?
I do not know. I wasn't there.
Bush's status now technically?
He's the vice president. No, he is not.
What night at the White House, Lynn?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
Did the presidential limousine go to any other place, or did it make a direct route from the scene of the shooting to the hospital?
To the best of my knowledge, it came directly to the hospital.
Can you put to rest all rumors, all fears that more than one gunman was involved in this?
To the best of my knowledge, there was only one gunman. That's all we've heard of, and the people who were on the scene don't indicate there was anything more.
The conspiracy behind the scenes?
Oh, I'm not going to get into that. For goodness sake, we've been, you know, we'll wait and let the Secret Service and the police do their investigation, and then we'll look at it there. But I don't think that's for me even to speculate on, no matter how far-fetched it may be.
Hold on a minute. What?
Will this incident change the president's attitude towards handguns?
I think that the president can speak for himself on that when the time comes.
Who has physical possession of the bullet at this moment? What?
To my knowledge, the Secret Service does. Now, if you all would hold it for just a moment, I would like to reintroduce Sheila Patton to you, who is the First Lady's press secretary, and she can tell you about Mrs. Reagan. Sheila?
Mrs. Reagan is fine. She's calm. She's been calm and composed throughout this ordeal. She is grateful for the outpouring of support and prayers from all over the world. She's also grateful for the fine medical attention that her husband is receiving. And lastly, she's praying for Jim Brady, for Agent McCarthy, and Officer Delahanty, and she hopes everyone else is too.
Sheila, how did Mrs. Reagan hear about this, and how did she come to the hospital?
Mrs. Reagan heard there was a shooting from her Secret Service agent. We had just returned to the White House from a luncheon. She immediately left for the hospital and learned that the president had been shot here at the hospital.
No, that the president had been.
She learned it after she arrived here.
Staying here all night?
That has not been determined yet.
How many minutes after the president arrived did she appear?
To the best of my recollection, we left about 25 of 3.
Where? And got
From
here?
the White House.
And got here and...
In 5 minutes.
Reagan had any contact with Mrs. Brady at all during the day?
Yes. She has seen both Mrs. Brady and Mrs. McCarthy.
You tell us anything about that?
It was a private meeting in an office near the emergency room.
Did she take a visit to the chapel on the first floor?
Yes, she did. She visited the chapel.
When was that?
Shortly thereafter.
Shortly after she arrived?
After the president went up for surgery. I do not know.
Let me make a Let me make a couple of quick announcements. Vice President Bush is spending the night at the Vice President's residence, so that clears that up. Secondly, I've been asked, do I want to move the AM briefing to room 450 in the EOB because it's larger, and so let's move it to room 450 in the EOB because it's larger. We will see you there in the morning. Thank you. What?
Is that going to be it for tonight? Do we anticipate any, or should we anticipate any announcement regarding Jim Brady?
My feeling is that depending on the situation, I would not rule it out. But that will come out of the White House briefing room. I think we can wind up this place here after this briefing. I think that would be more convenient for all of us.
Have our allies abroad been contacted about the president's stable condition?
I'm sorry?
Have our allies in Europe been contacted about the president's stable condition?
I cannot tell you if our allies have been contacted, but I would be willing to bet that they had been. I cannot answer that. I do not know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Well, that's the briefing here in the briefing room at George Washington University Hospital. Lynn Lofsinger ending it. We heard from Dr. Dennis O'Leary, who gave us the good news that the president is now in stable condition and the prognosis for his complete recovery is excellent. He will be able to make decisions by tomorrow. And according to Dr. O'Leary, at no time was President Reagan in any serious danger. Surgery of about 2 hours in duration was performed on him, basically to remove a bullet, which was removed intact, although it was mangled. It had entered under his left arm. It had struck a rib, moved down, and penetrated the left lung, but not too deeply, and at no time did it come into place near the heart. Dr. O'Leary's complete description of the president's condition, his operation, the prognosis for his future recovery was all upbeat, and as we leave this briefing room tonight, we have no reason to suspect anything other than that Ronald Reagan will be back on the job before too long, completely recovered, and even as early as tomorrow, making all the decisions that any president of the United States needs to make. As to James Brady, it is quite clear, the press secretary, that he is in much more serious shape. His condition is described as critical. Dr. O'Leary said that he was shot through the head with a bullet which penetrated his brain and went all the way through. He is still in surgery, according to last report, and while Dr. O'Leary would make no guess as to the prognosis, that is what is going to happen eventually in the case of James Brady, he did answer one question by saying that the question was, if Mr. Brady survives, will he have any permanent brain damage? And the doctor did answer that question by saying, yes, he thought that was likely, that he would have some permanent brain damage. And he described how when they were trying to go through the brain now in this operation, they would clean out the dead tissue and save as much as they could. But clearly, when you lose any tissue in the brain, you help destroy the capacity of that brain to function as it was meant to, and it is threatening to life, perhaps, in the extreme case, although those were not Dr. O'Leary's words. The Secret Service agent is in good condition, and he does not appear to be in any life-threatening capacity or in any danger here. There were a lot of questions, of course, about the details of the operation, details of the president's wound, and we can recapitulate them at some later time. But, gentlemen, I think it's just suffice it to report that the president seems like he's going to recover in quick time. A lot of reporters wanted to know if Dr. O'Leary thought Mr. Reagan ought to take a little vacation. I don't know whether they thought they would like to go to California and vacation themselves there, but Dr. O'Leary said it was not his place to give that kind of advice, and so he wouldn't do so. But he wouldn't say how long the president needs to stay in the hospital either, but from every indication it would not be a prolonged time. And he suggested that there would be no further reason for surgery of the president or any other operation here. So I think that winds it up for this evening from the briefing room at George Washington University Hospital. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you very, very much for all the reporting that you've done today during this most tense time. And that does sum it up, doesn't it? An optimistic report on the president, not an encouraging report on Jim Brady. And the other person who was injured, the Secret Service agent, Tim McCarthy, who was at George Washington Hospital, I should say, the only other one who was there. He is in good condition. Tom Delahanty of the District of Columbia Police Department, he is at another hospital, the Washington Hospital Center, and he is listed now as in serious condition there. So the president is in the recovery room, and he's awake.
Just one other line from Dr. O'Leary, and as somebody pointed out here, where was Dr. O'Leary during the campaign? He said about the president, he is physiologically very young, and he said maybe it's not medically extraordinary, that is how well he has survived the operation in this incident, but it is just short of that.
He said he sailed through it.
Sailed through it. Now, just a few moments ago, we had an interview with Maureen Reagan, the daughter of the president, in Woodland Heights, California, and she was asked what kind of assurances she had received on the health of her father. Here is that interview.
That he is a very healthy person, and that everybody expects everything to go very well, and that the first thing he said was, "I forgot to duck."
Will he be going to Washington?
We're not sure yet. Both my brother and my sister and I have talked about it, and we haven't reached a final decision, mainly because we're waiting to hear what's going on and how everybody feels back there. We don't want to make it look any more serious than it is by all converging on Washington. Personally, we want to be there right now and would have left 4 hours ago, but we don't always get to do what we want to do, so we'll have to wait and see.
Maureen, how prepared were you to accept when your father was elected that this kind of thing might happen?
I am not prepared to accept this, whether it was my father or anybody else. I have seen throughout the day the reaction of other members of the family. Mine is fury and rage and anger, and that in this country, this kind of garbage still goes on, and it is not going to happen to this president. By God, it is not going to happen to this president.
Well, you can see the very